Welcome to This Deep Dive. And this time, we're tackling a pretty universal question. When do we actually become adults?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, and get this, our source material, all YouTube.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And not just any YouTube, we're diving into the world of English learning channels.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, who knew they had so much to say about adulting?
Right.
We'll be checking out everything from casual chats to full-on comedy sketches, and it's amazing how much insight they pack into these videos.
I'm intrigued.
So get ready for some laughs, some cultural quirks, and maybe even a moment or two where you think, wait, am I even a real adult?
Sounds relatable.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so first up, we're heading over to Speak English with Vanessa,
Okay.
where Vanessa and her co-host Dan jump right into this whole adulting debate.
Okay.
And Dan, he just comes out swinging. He thinks 16 should be the age of adulthood, even though he admits that back then, neither he nor society were really ready for it.
Uh-huh. I can see that. Like, theoretically, maybe, but in practice.
Totally. And that's what's so interesting about their dynamic. Vanessa, she brings a more grounded perspective. She ties adulthood to being financially independent and, having the ability to make your own choices.
Which makes sense.
Right. But then she also acknowledges that it's not always so clear-cut.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, there's a lot of gray area as we move from depending on others to, really running our own lives.
So it's a process, not a switch that flips on your 18th birthday.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And just when we think we're starting to nail down a definition, Dan throws in another wrench. Kids.
Okay, how so?
He's basically saying that parenthood, whether you're ready or not, it just forces this level of responsibility. It's unlike anything else.
Yeah, I can see that. You don't really have a choice but to step up.
Right. And Vanessa builds on that by suggesting that becoming a parent can really reveal someone's true character.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it can push people who are already responsible to go even further, but then those who are maybe less mature, they might really struggle to adapt.
It's like a pressure test for adulthood.
Right. And this leads them into a conversation about something that's kind of missing in American culture, a clear rite of passage into adulthood.
Yeah, like a formal ceremony or something to mark that transition.
Exactly. Vanessa even points out that lots of other cultures have these traditions, and she wonders if maybe the U.S. could learn a thing or two from them.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Like, does not having that clear marker make it harder to know when you've actually crossed that line?
That's such a good point. All right, now let's shift gears a little.
Okay.
We're moving over to English Easy Practice, another language learning channel.
All right.
But this time, instead of a direct discussion, we get to watch the hosts, Ryan and Christine, go through their morning routines.
Their morning routines. What's so special about that?
Well, it's almost like a visual representation of two different approaches to adulting. Ryan's morning is, chaotic is a good word.
Okay.
Yeah, he oversleeps, rushes to walk the dog, grabs a last-minute breakfast. It's clear he has a job and everything, but the way he manages his time, it just screams, still figuring this whole adult thing out.
Yeah, I've had mornings like that. Definitely not a picture of perfect adulting.
Right. And then there's Christine. She's got it all together,
Okay.
Morning exercise, packed lunch, arriving at work early. It's all structured and intentional.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if being an adult is less about age and more about building those consistent habits that set you up for success.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So it's not just what you're doing, but how you're approaching it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we've talked about the idea of independence, right?
Right.
And we've seen how adulting can play out in everyday habits.
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to go a little deeper with those habits.
Okay.
Our next source is English. And they zero in on continuous self-improvement as a key marker of adulthood.
Continuous self-improvement. I like that. Always striving to be better.
Right. And what's really interesting is how much emphasis they put on actively seeking growth. The host is all about learning through podcasts, reading, reflecting through writing, joining online communities, and, of course, practicing English daily.
Naturally.
Of course. It's a perspective that sees adulthood as a constant journey of learning and self-development.
Not just reaching a certain point and then coasting, right?
Exactly. It's about always pushing yourself to learn and grow and become a better version of yourself.
I love that. It takes the pressure off needing to have it all figured out.
Right. It's okay to be a work in progress.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I think we could all use a little laugh right now.
Oh, always up for a laugh.
So let's take a break from the serious stuff and head over to Learn English Conversation.
Okay.
Now, this channel uses humor to, really capture those relatable struggles we all face as we try to adult.
Ooh, I'm already intrigued.
Their comedy sketches, they hit a little too close to home, especially if you've ever tried to order healthy food at a restaurant and then been tempted by dessert or tried to squeeze in a workout while juggling deadlines.
Oh, man, that sounds painfully familiar.
Right. And it's the kind of humor that makes you laugh and cringe at the same time because it's just so true.
It's like they're reading our minds.
It's like they've been spying on us,
Yeah.
right? But you know what? Maybe the takeaway is that none of us ever truly master this whole adulting thing. It's just an ongoing series of like awkward attempts and hilarious fumbles, but hey, at least we can find the humor in it.
Exactly. Gotta laugh at yourself sometimes.
It's so important. And, you know, it reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously. We're all just figuring things out as we go, and sometimes the best we can do is just laugh at our own mistakes. Now, speaking of fumbles,
Uh-oh, where are we going now?
back to Speak English with Vanessa.
Oh, okay.
But this time we're exploring something you might not expect. Food preferences.
Food.
Yeah.
How does that relate to being an adult?
I know, it sounds a little random, but trust me, they make a really interesting connection.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So they start by admitting that neither of them are, like, master chefs.
Same here.
Right. And they say they gravitate towards practical bulk meals, things like chili and tacos.
Ah, the classics. Easy to make, lots of leftovers.
Exactly. Stuff that's easy to make and provides leftovers. It's a far cry from those gourmet aspirations we might have had when we were younger.
Yeah, there's something to be said for simple and satisfying.
Totally. It seems like they're embracing practicality and efficiency over, like, fancy presentation and complicated recipes. Maybe adulthood is about accepting that we don't need to be culinary masters to feed ourselves well.
It's about choosing what truly matters to you, right?
Right. Okay, for our final point, we're sticking with Vanessa and Dan.
Okay.
This time they're talking about their dream homes.
Dream homes. All right, I'm in.
And guess what? Even their ideal living spaces reveal something about their views on adulthood.
Okay, lay it on me.
Dan's dream home, it's
Yeah.
all about a massive game room.
Nice.
Right, but then he insists on having it, like, locked up to avoid distractions.
Wait, he wants to lock up his own game room?
It's a perfect illustration of how being an adult doesn't mean giving up on fun, but maybe it means finding ways to, like, manage it responsibly.
I get it. Sometimes you need boundaries, even from yourself.
Right. And Vanessa, her vision includes a dedicated filming studio.
Ooh, fancy.
It's a nod to her career aspirations and creative ambitions. Her dream home isn't just about comfort and relaxation. It's also a space designed to support her work and passions.
That's really cool. It's like her home reflects her goals and who she wants to be.
Exactly. It's a reminder that as we grow up, our homes can evolve to match our changing priorities and goals. And, you know, maybe that's part of what adulthood is all about, creating an environment that supports the life you want to build, both professionally and personally.
I like that. It's about designing a life that works for you.
Exactly. So we've covered some pretty insightful perspectives on adulthood, from like the really philosophical to the everyday stuff.
Yeah, it's been fascinating.
But before we wrap up, there's one more channel I want to touch on. Learn English Conversation.
Oh, okay.
It might seem like a bit of a detour, but their comedic take on adulting adds another layer to this whole thing, you know?
I agree. Humor can be such a great way to explore even serious topics, right?
Exactly. It helps us see the absurdity in certain situations and like
Yeah.
find that sense of, oh, thank goodness I'm not the only one who feels this way.
Right, exactly. It's like a shared experience.
And Learn English Conversation, they're masters at capturing those relatable moments that make us all go, yep, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
I love that. So what kind of things do they poke fun at?
Oh, everything. From social awkwardness to struggling with technology, you name it.
Oh, the technology struggles. Don't even get me started.
Right? Right? Like, how many times have you had to Google how to do something that should be simple?
Too many to count, honestly.
I know, me too. It's like a rite of passage for the modern adult. But one sketch that really stands out, they do this hilarious take on small talk. You know, those painfully awkward conversations you have at parties or work events.
Ugh, yes. The forced smiles, the desperate search for something, anything to talk about.
Exactly. They perfectly capture the whole thing, from the forced smiles to that overwhelming relief when you can finally escape the conversation.
It's like they're secretly filming us at every awkward gathering.
Right. But it also highlights a challenge that's so specific to adulthood, the need to navigate those social situations with, like, grace and diplomacy, even when you'd rather be anywhere else.
It's definitely a learned skill.
Totally. It's something you get better at over time, but even then, we all have those moments where we feel like we're back in high school, just completely fumbling our way through.
Oh, for sure. It's like all of a sudden you forget how to be a normal human being.
Right. And you know what? Another sketch that really resonated with me is their take on dealing with difficult coworkers.
Oh, tell me about it.
They nail those passive-aggressive comments. The territorial behavior, the office gossip. It's so accurate, it's almost scary.
Oh, I bet. It's a reminder that the workplace can be its own little jungle sometimes.
It's a jungle out there.
Yeah.
And navigating those relationships, that's a big part of adulting, too. Figuring out how to handle those tricky personalities.
Absolutely. And sometimes, you just have to laugh about it to survive.
So true. Sometimes laughter is the best medicine, especially when you're dealing with, like, the office drama.
Agreed. It helps to keep things in perspective.
Exactly. And, it ties back to that idea of emotional intelligence and self-awareness that we touched on earlier. Being an adult often means managing your own emotions while also being sensitive to how others are feeling.
It's a balancing act, for sure.
It really is. Okay, I know we've jumped around a bit, but I want to circle back to Speak English with Vanessa for a moment.
Okay, what did I miss?
They talked about something that's really relevant to our whole discussion of adulthood. Goals and aspirations.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, they shared their personal bucket list, which was really cool because it gave us a glimpse into what they want to achieve in life.
That's a fun way to get to know someone, seeing what's on their bucket list.
Right. It tells you so much about their values and priorities.
Mm.
For example, Dan talked about wanting to visit all 7 continents.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is.
Yeah.
And it speaks to his adventurous spirit, his curiosity about the world, his willingness to try new things.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So what about Vanessa? What's on her bucket list?
Vanessa's goal is more altruistic. She wants to make a positive impact on the world through her work.
That's beautiful. It's about contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And it shows that as we mature, our goals can change and evolve as we gain a better understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
And who knows, maybe by sharing our goals, we can inspire each other to actually achieve them.
I love that idea.
Mm.
Speaking of goals, let's shift gears again.
Lead the way.
We're going to explore something that's often seen as a major marker of adulthood: homeownership.
Ah, the great debate. Rent versus buy.
Right. And Vanessa and Dan actually share their thoughts on this whole dilemma.
So what's their take? Are they team rent or team buy?
Well, they didn't necessarily pick sides, but they did talk about the pros and cons of each option.
Makes sense. It's a big decision.
It is. And their discussion really highlighted the financial side of things, like mortgage payments, property taxes, and all those unexpected costs that can pop up when you own a home.
Yeah, the hidden costs of homeownership can really sneak up on you.
Right. And it's a good reminder that buying a house is a huge financial commitment, and you really got to weigh those costs against the benefits.
It's not just about having a place to call your own, it's about being able to afford it, too.
Exactly. But they also talked about the emotional side of homeownership.
Oh, right, like the pride of owning your own place.
Exactly. Dan talked about that sense of pride, that accomplishment that comes with owning a piece of property. And Vanessa, she spoke about the feeling of stability and belonging that a home can provide.
I can see that. It's like your home becomes an extension of yourself.
It is. It really is. And, their conversation also touched on the responsibilities that come with being a homeowner. They talked about upkeep and repairs, being a good neighbor, managing the property.
Right, it's not all fun and games.
It's not. Owning a home isn't just about having a place to live. It's about taking on all those responsibilities that come with it.
It's like a crash course in adulting.
It is. And sometimes those challenges can be pretty overwhelming, especially if you're new to the whole thing.
Oh, I bet. Especially when you're juggling everything else life throws at you.
Right. Remember Ryan's chaotic morning routine from English Easy Practice? Imagine him trying to deal with a leaky faucet, a broken sprinkler, and a grumpy neighbor all at once.
Oh my gosh, that's a recipe for disaster.
It would be a comedy of errors. But it also highlights the importance of being prepared for those unexpected challenges that can come with homeownership.
Totally. It's not always easy, but with a little patience and resourcefulness and maybe a good sense of humor, it can be a really rewarding experience.
Exactly. And, it's like that with adulthood in general, right?
I think so. It's full of ups and downs, but it's all part of the journey.
It really is. It seems like homeownership, much like adulthood itself, is a journey with both those high points and those challenges.
It definitely is.
But hey, maybe that's the beauty of it all, right? Figuring things out as we go, learning from our mistakes, and in the end, creating a life that truly reflects what we value and what we want.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. Adulthood isn't about reaching some finish line or checking off boxes on a list. It's more about embracing that constant process of growing, learning, and figuring out who you are.
Totally. So as we wrap up our deep dive into when adulthood actually begins, what are your final thoughts? What really stuck with you from all these different YouTube perspectives?
What strikes me the most is just how many different facets there are to adulthood. It's not as simple as turning a certain age or hitting specific milestones. It's about developing that mindset of responsibility, resilience, being open to constantly learning new things. It's also about finding that sweet spot between chasing your passions and taking care of your responsibilities.
Hmm.
And it's definitely about embracing the inevitable curveballs that life throws your way and finding a way to laugh about it all.
I love that. And it's so clear that there's no single right answer to this question, right?
Yeah.
Adulthood is a personal journey that unfolds differently for everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's super important to remember. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others or trying to stick to some rigid timeline.
Right.
But that just leads to stress and self-doubt. The cool thing about adulthood is that it's this unique and evolving experience for each person.
So true. So maybe instead of fixating on a specific age or some checklist of achievements, the real question is, how are we choosing to grow and evolve every day? What steps are we taking to become the best versions of ourselves, no matter how old we are or what our circumstances are?
That's a really powerful question to leave our listeners with. It shifts the focus away from those external markers of adulthood and turns it into this internal process of growth and self-discovery.
Exactly. It's a reminder that adulthood isn't some destination you arrive at, it's an ongoing journey. And the best part is, we get to choose our own path and decide what it means to be an adult on our own terms.
And honestly, that's probably the most liberating realization of all. We have the power to shape our own experiences and create a life that's both meaningful and fulfilling.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of adulthood. We hope you've gained some new insights, had a few laughs along the way, and maybe even feel a little less alone in your own adulting journey.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not about having all the answers. It's about embracing the journey with curiosity, resilience, and a good dose of humor.